In silent rooms of luxurious hotels, behind doors reinforced with state-of-the-art security systems, some of the most iconic figures in pop culture seem to disappear for hours, sometimes days, returning with colder stares, rehearsed speeches, and an aura that escapes common understanding. What happens during these absences? The public, often distracted by the shine of the cameras, ignores the subtle yet consistent changes in the behavior of certain celebrities after key moments in their careers, awards, global tours, or spiritual rebirths. Over the decades, independent researchers, investigative journalists, and even former industry employees have started to question: could the sudden success of some of these figures be hiding a deeper cost? A price demanded by ancient forces, hidden under the veil of fame? What, after all, hides behind the carefully crafted masks of celebrities? Are they merely ordinary people, or are they serving as temporary vessels for something much older and invisible? Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I'm Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I want to ask for your help. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just a click, but it makes a huge difference for YouTube to show the videos to more people, and for me to keep bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Let's get into the video. Have you ever noticed how some celebrities seem to change overnight? I'm not just talking about a new haircut or a new artistic phase. I'm talking about a change that goes deeper, that alters their gaze, posture, even the way they speak. Some say it's just marketing. Others say it's the weight of fame. But what if it's something else? What if what we're seeing is just the shell? There was a case at one of those award shows watched by the whole world, where an artist stopped speaking in the middle of her speech. She froze, blank stare, total silence. And then, as if someone flipped a switch, she started talking again. But with a different energy, a different tone. Those who saw it felt the discomfort, but it was all brushed off as fatigue, as if it were normal. But is that normal? These episodes, as bizarre as they may seem, repeat. In specific moments, when a career explodes, when a public image drastically changes, or when the person disappears for a while and comes back renewed. But what happens during that time out of the spotlight? Because when they return, they're not just different, it's like they've been rebooted. And then come the strange speeches. I'm just a channel. This new version of me. Something greater is guiding me. It's always the same line, the same language, different celebrities, different contexts, but one repeated script. And we accept it as if it's just part of the show. But once you start putting the pieces together, the picture changes. A lot. Serious research on body language shows that after these changes, these people avoid eye contact, adopt rigid postures, speak as if reading from a script. And this, according to the experts themselves, is a common pattern in people who are dissociated, disconnected from their own identity. But what if they're not just disconnected, but replaced? Since the 70s, there have been discreet reports of secret meetings with members of esoteric groups, silent retreats on private properties, closed ceremonies. Many of those names vanished from the radar shortly after. Others came back different. The few bits of information that leaked from these environments speak of initiations, acceptance of a new self, and even symbolic rituals involving masks. But what is being initiated there? Because there's one detail that can't be ignored: the use of the mask. In many ancient cultures, the mask was a symbol of spiritual transition, used when a new spirit took the place of the previous one. And today, we see that same symbol in music videos, concerts, red carpets. It might seem like a coincidence, but when it starts repeating this much, can we still call it a coincidence? And when these public figures disappear out of nowhere and return with a new identity, more aligned, more controlled, it's hard not to think about what happens far from the cameras. Some say it's a retreat, a time for oneself. But what demands so much isolation and relearning, to the point of erasing traces of the former personality? There are also the contracts, the ones nobody sees. Clauses demanding absolute secrecy, reintegration sessions, commitments to profound changes in image and behavior. And who's behind all this? Agencies? Corporations? Or something even bigger, operating behind the scenes and using these figures as vessels? Every now and then, someone tries to break free. Says confusing things on live streams, appears disturbed, says they saw too much. And shortly after, they disappear. Or come back healed, recentered. And then, never mention it again. Can we call that a breakdown? Or was it a warning? The theory surrounding all this is heavy, but it can no longer be ignored. What if some of these people are no longer who they were? What if, at certain moments, they're merely lending their bodies to something that needs to be seen, heard, felt, but has no form of its own? The question no one wants to ask is, when you look into a celebrity's eyes, are you really looking at them? Whenever a celebrity disappears from the spotlight for a while, the explanation is usually simple: taking care of their health, on a journey of self-discovery, going through a spiritual moment. The media repeats it, the public accepts it. But what if these absences hide something much greater? What if, during these off-radar periods, true transition rituals are taking place? Silent exchanges, reprogramming. Some of these disappearances last weeks, others months. When they return, something is different. Their demeanor, word choices, the way their gaze no longer shines like before. And almost always they come back with a new aesthetic, a more impersonal tone, an aura that no longer matches the person we once knew. It feels like they've been through something deep and controlled. There are discrete but consistent reports of properties in isolated locations, with no cell signal, where these artists are taken by their teams during these periods. The descriptions speak of absolute silence, sensory deprivation, and encounters with unknown figures who do not belong to the music or film industry, but are always present. Who are these people? Why are they there at such pivotal moments? One striking case involves a singer who, at the height of his fame, abruptly halted his world tour claiming spiritual exhaustion. For nearly 2 months, there were no updates, no appearances. When he reappeared, not only had the sound of his music changed, but also the content. Lyrics filled with occult references, hermetic symbols, and phrases that, according to esoteric analysts, directly refer to channeling practices. Was it just an artistic phase, or a reflection of something he experienced during that retreat? These replacement rituals, according to theorists who study discrete societies, follow an ancient structure: depersonalization, symbolic reconstruction, and incorporation. In other words, first, the original identity is dismantled. Then a new container is built, prepared to receive something new, be it a collective archetype, an energetic force, or, according to some schools, a specific entity that begins to directly influence the host's consciousness. Many ancient religions describe similar processes. In ancient Egypt, for example, priests were trained from childhood to receive the Neteru, intelligences associated with the gods, who could only act in the physical world through prepared human bodies. In Aztec rituals, the chosen ones became temporary gods before being sacrificed. The idea of a body being used as a vehicle is not new. What has changed is the way it's done, and where it happens. The symbolism behind these modern ceremonies is also striking. Many artists, upon returning from these retreats, appear with specific tattoos: eyes, serpents, labyrinths, signs that seem harmless in isolation, but together form a complex symbolic language, present in occult orders like the Hermetic, the Rosicrucian, and even Thelema, founded by Aleister Crowley. What are these symbols saying to those who know how to decipher them? Another recurring detail is the reports of rebirths. Celebrities say they died to themselves and returned with a new mission. Some even celebrate second birthdays, marking the exact date of their return after the retreat. These statements go unnoticed by the public, treated as metaphors. But what if they're coded confessions? Announcements that something new now occupies that body? There's also the silent presence of mentors. Names that appear out of nowhere, are not part of the original team, and after the return, become responsible for the career, the image, the speeches. They are discrete figures, almost invisible, but extremely influential. Often, these mentors have ties to little-known organizations which don't appear in contracts, but are always at the center of the most important decisions. And there's one common practice that almost no one questions: total isolation during these transformations. No internet, no contact with family, no outside information. This isn't just rest. It's a process, a kind of recalibration, because to install a new consciousness, one must erase the traces of the former. Have you ever wondered why so many of these figures return looking programmed? Some behavioral neuroscience experts have discreetly commented on cognitive patterns that shift after intense immersion events. The voice changes, emotional response diminishes, facial expression neutralizes. All of this can be explained by science, yes, but it also aligns perfectly with ancient descriptions of consciousness replacement. Is it a coincidence that science and ritual describe the same symptoms? What goes on in these rituals remains shrouded in silence. But the signs are everywhere. And if these ceremonies are, in fact, gradual replacement processes? What if, when one of these figures returns to the media, what we're seeing is just a new layer, built, activated, and controlled by forces the public cannot perceive? When we talk about celebrities being used as channels by entities, many people think this is a recent phenomenon, something from the digital age. But it's not. Entertainment has always had a much deeper and darker relationship with the unexplainable. The archives of the past are full of signs. The difference is that, back then, everything was harder to document. But even so, they left traces. Tracing these fragments is like opening a box that was never meant to be touched. At the turn of the 20th century, for example, European theater began to serve as fertile ground for esoteric practices disguised as art. In Paris, figures connected to the theater scene participated in gatherings with occultists from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a group known for conducting invocation and spiritual channeling ceremonies. Names like Sarah Bernhardt, one of the greatest actresses of the time, were mentioned in private documents. The connection between acting and incorporation wasn't just symbolic, it was literal. In the United States, early Hollywood was already showing strange signs. In the 1920s, directors and screenwriters attended meetings with members of the Ordo Templi Orientis, an organization tied to Aleister Crowley. It was believed that certain scripts and theatrical performances could function as rituals, symbolic structures that, when performed, opened space for metaphysical manifestations. Were these films merely stories, or rituals disguised as entertainment? Crowley himself, a central figure in modern occultism, wrote extensively about the power of manipulating the masses through art. To him, the ideal artist was a conduit of energy, someone who, by opening themselves to the creative process, became receptive to external forces. This view resonated with various circles of the cultural elite and eventually infiltrated cinema, music, and even advertising. When artists say they embodied a character, are they really just talking about acting? In the golden age of music, between the 1950s and 70s, there are records of musicians who claimed to enter trances while composing. Some said the songs simply came to them, fully formed out of nowhere. Others reported waking up in the middle of the night with entire lyrics in their heads, without knowing where they came from. There are plenty of old interviews in which rock legends say they felt they weren't alone on stage. At the time, all of it was romanticized as genius. But what if it was something else? One of the most talked about cases is that of Jim Morrison, lead singer of The Doors. He openly said he was possessed by a Native American spirit during his performances. He didn't speak metaphorically, he truly believed it, and his behavior on stage seemed to confirm it. Altered facial expressions, involuntary gestures, states of ecstasy that went beyond the effects of any substance. Was Morrison offering more than just music? And it's not just in the West. In Japanese culture, for example, there is the concept of kuchi-ose, an ancestral practice where artists became vessels for ancestral spirits during theatrical performances. Art was ritual, and those who watched participated. Some of these practices are still alive today, adapted to the modern stage, but still guided by the same idea, the artist as a channel. Behind the scenes of the American industry, names like Stanley Kubrick also raised suspicions. The director was known for his perfectionism, but also for his obsession with occult symbols. His final film, Eyes Wide Shut, dives precisely into the secret world of clandestine societies and occult ceremonies. Kubrick died just a few days after delivering the final version of the film, a coincidence that still sparks speculation to this day. Was he trying to reveal something? The industry doesn't ignore these connections. It simply turns everything into spectacle, and that's where the danger lies. What appears to be harmless entertainment is often loaded with codes, references, and repetitions that activate symbolic patterns. The audience consumes without realizing, and the artists, even without fully understanding what they're part of, continue delivering performances that carry more than just talent. Internal documents from the music industry in the 1980s reveal that certain producers used energy consultants to determine the best track order on albums. The goal? To maximize emotional impact and, in the recorded words, achieve subliminal resonance with the collective unconscious. This isn't theory. It was recorded, signed, archived. The connection between entertainment and entities isn't just an eccentric idea. It has been forming for over a century. The difference is that now the tools are more sophisticated, the media is more powerful, and the public is often more vulnerable. The stage was never just a place for performance. It has always been an altar. And the question that won't go away: when you watch a show, listen to a song, see a performance, are you really just being entertained, or are you participating in something you never knew existed? Have you noticed how certain symbols appear repeatedly in the pop universe? All-seeing eyes, pyramids, masks, geometric figures, butterflies, labyrinths. At first glance, it may seem like nothing more than a creative aesthetic. But is that really all it is? When these symbols appear again and again, across different artists from different countries, at strategic points in their careers, maybe they're not just visual elements. Maybe they're communicating something, not with the general public, but with those who know how to read the signs. The eye symbol, whether isolated, inside a pyramid, covered by a hand, or highlighted in costumes, shows up with unsettling frequency. It is directly linked to the concept of surveillance and enlightenment. In esoteric traditions, it represents a higher consciousness observing everything, including the performer. Why do so many artists use this symbol when they are reborn artistically? An interesting pattern emerges when you compare music videos and performances before and after pivotal career events for these figures. The symbolic presence intensifies. Artists who had never used such imagery begin displaying eyes on stage, triangle tattoos, crossings of light and shadow, and even choreographed dances in geometric ritual formations. Is this just creativity, or a silent language marking a new phase? The butterfly, for instance, goes far beyond the popular idea of rebirth. Within a more occult context, the butterfly is the symbol of mind control, especially in the MKUltra project, from which the term monarch originated. And why does that matter? Because, curiously, many celebrities involved in controversies around control and image manipulation are seen wearing butterfly wings, specific patterned clothing, or surrounded by this visual symbol precisely after public breakdowns. Many of these artists don't choose their own outfits. The clothes are selected by creative teams who work with concepts and themes. And these teams, in many cases, are connected to agencies with a history of symbolic usage. We're talking about messages that the artist may not even fully understand, but which are displayed to millions of people, loaded with ancestral meaning. Repetition also appears in the staging. Temple-shaped stages, lights arranged in ritualistic patterns, constant use of specific tones, red, black, gold, and circular or spiral movements directly evoke invocation ceremonies. When you observe a performance with this in mind, the aesthetic stops being just beautiful. It becomes strategic. A stage, yes, but also a symbolic space carefully constructed. There is a recurring phrase among stylists and artistic directors of these stars: everything communicates. This phrase, said in interviews for fashion and culture magazines, takes on a much heavier weight when associated with symbolic context. Because if everything communicates, what exactly are they trying to say when a star appears covered in inverted crosses, with painted eyes and hands in ritualistic positions? Even award shows seem to follow specific patterns. Events like the Super Bowl, the Grammys, or the VMAs often place artists in performances that symbolize rebirth, sacrifice, coronation, or possession. All with plenty of fire, darkness, blinding lights, and expressions that suggest trance states. Have you noticed how these themes repeat year after year, with different artists, but the same visual narrative? And it's not just on stage. Album covers also follow this pattern. A face split in half, one eye covered, a mirror, a staircase leading to the void. These images aren't new. They're taken from ancient manuals of mystical and occult symbolism. The difference is that now they're packaged as pop art. But why continue using the same symbols, the same references, with such precision? The major visual marketing agencies work with consultants who deeply understand ancestral symbolism. This is documented. Some have even participated in institutional campaigns tied to Freemasonry, Thelema, and mystery schools. They know what they're doing. They know what each shape, each color, each gesture represents, and they apply that directly to the images the entire world consumes. Of course, for most of the public, all this goes unnoticed. But for those who understand the language, it's as if these artists are sending signals, announcing transformations, sealing pacts, completing stages. Is this all coincidence or part of an older system, restructured within modern pop culture? The lingering question is, if everything communicates, what exactly are they communicating? when everyone seems to be saying the same thing, using the same language, all at the same time. Media has always been a bridge between what happens behind the scenes and what reaches the public. But the question few people ask is, what exactly is being transmitted through this bridge? Because when we talk about influence, it's not just about ideas, behaviors, or trends. There is a subtler and more dangerous layer that operates in the unseen, spiritual contagion. Something you don't see, but you feel. For decades, scientists have studied the effects of music, imagery, and symbolic repetition on the human brain. What they discovered is that certain patterns, both sonic and visual, provoke real changes in brain waves, mood, perception of time, and even consciousness. That's science. But what if those patterns are being used deliberately, not to entertain, but to open up space inside you? When a music video is released, for instance, it comes with more than choreography and rhythm. It carries intentions. And often, those intentions are masked by provocative or emotional aesthetics. But if you pay attention to the details, to the symbols, the words, the gestures, you'll notice there's a ritual structure, an invocation, a kind of audiovisual ceremony with a purpose, to activate something inside the viewer. And here's a delicate point, the passivity of the audience. When you're watching, listening, consuming, you're receptive. Your field is open. And if the content was designed to create that openness, what might enter through that breach? The answer may be uncomfortable, but it needs to be asked. Because what seems like just a catchy beat might, in reality, be tuning your frequency to something that wants to manifest. Have you ever noticed how certain content triggers reactions you don't fully understand? A sense of unease, a chill, an anxiety that comes out of nowhere? That's not by chance. There are soundtracks built using specific scales that induce altered states of consciousness. Colors that provoke specific sensations, rhythms that mimic the heartbeat. All of it planned, all of it intentional. And it's not just music videos. Series, films, and even advertisements follow similar formulas. Some scripts are so standardized they seem to come from the same source. And maybe they do. There are teams that work exclusively with symbolic narrative structure. This is not theory, it's real. Major studios hire consultants specialized in archetypes and rituals to craft stories that go beyond entertainment. The audience absorbs, repeats, vibrates at the same frequency. And the scariest part, they defend it without knowing what they're defending. Because when something enters through repetition, empathy, or fascination, you begin to identify with it. And when that happens, the channel is already open. And whoever is ready to enter, enters. The term egregore defines this phenomenon well. It's a collective thought form, fed by emotions, visualizations, and repetitions. The media industry creates and feeds these egregores every day. And the more people connect to them, the stronger they become. It's no coincidence that certain songs explode out of nowhere, certain characters become instant icons. Something is being channeled behind all of it. There are accounts of screenwriters and producers who describe moments of creative overflow as if they were possessed. Ideas that appear fully formed, scenes that write themselves, stories that seemed already finished, just waiting for someone to bring them to the surface. This is common, and almost always dismissed as part of the artistic process. But is that really all it is? Over time, media stopped merely informing or entertaining. It began shaping realities, molding beliefs, directing emotions. And that power has been so well distributed that most people don't even realize they're being guided. But what if that guidance is part of a global, continuous, silent ritual? A rite of opening, not of physical portals, but mental ones? Because if media is the vehicle, who's in the driver's seat? And where exactly is this road taking those who follow it without question? Every structure has its rules. And when we talk about the entertainment elite, those rules aren't just clauses in visible contracts. There is a kind of agreement that doesn't appear on paper, but is felt. A silent pact, one that offers access, visibility, ascension, but comes at a high cost when someone tries to walk away. Because once you accept becoming a channel, turning back is not expected. Some celebrities have tried. They spoke too much, broke the narrative, and soon after they vanished. Not symbolically, literally. They disappeared from the media, canceled tours, went off social media. When they reappear, they're different. More restrained, less spontaneous, as if they'd been reconditioned or replaced. This isn't coincidence, it's a pattern. There are videos, interviews, and old posts showing artists revealing, albeit indirectly, what they've seen. They speak of strange things, truths that can't be spoken, presences behind the scenes. Sometimes they smile, trying to mask the discomfort. Sometimes their voice cracks. Sometimes they're interrupted live. This happens more often than you think. The public forgets, but the industry doesn't. A world-famous actress once said, in an interview outside the US, that there's a force behind the cameras that dictates everything, and you only realize it once you're inside. Shortly after, she entered a public crisis, was hospitalized. When she returned, her statements had completely changed. Rehearsed speech, distant look, no mention of what she had said before. Is that just emotional collapse? Or was a message delivered? Another curious case involves a singer who began speaking openly about industry manipulation and mind control. On social media, he posted disconnected symbols, coded phrases, images of closed eyes and keys. He said he was trying to break free. Within weeks, the account was deleted, the label announced a health break, and when he came back, he seemed like a different person. His posture, style, even facial expression. Everything had changed. These aren't just rumors. Behind the scenes of major award shows, there are whispers about reprogramming, a term frequently used among security staff, makeup artists, and sound technicians. These are the moments when the artist can't be seen. They're isolated, sometimes for hours. When they return, they act as if nothing happened. But those who saw them before notice the difference. The question is, what happens during those intervals? These public figures are not alone. Around them exists a network of control, agents, vocal coaches, stylists, advisors, all conditioned to keep the image intact. It's not just about protecting a brand. It's about protecting something far more delicate, the continuity of the channel. Because if the frequency is broken, the entity disconnects. And in this game, that's considered a serious failure. Breaking from this system comes with a price. Sometimes it's public. Sometimes it's sanity. There are reports of celebrities who tried to leave the industry completely, moving to another country, changing their name, abandoning everything. Some succeeded. Others were swept up in scandals, lawsuits, smear campaigns. The question is, why such effort to silence someone who just wanted to disappear? And the punishment doesn't always come as scandal. Sometimes it's subtle, a slow descent into obscurity. Lost contracts, forced erasure. And in many cases, the person begins to get sick, mentally, physically, spiritually, as if whatever was inhabiting them turned against the breach of contract. A kind of silent toll, invisible but relentless. A few voices have managed to stay strong. Artists who, even while facing retaliation, chose to speak out. Today they live on the margins, some on alternative podcasts, others in seclusion. But all of them share a similar look, one of those who've seen too much, and who know that what the public consumes with a smile isn't just entertainment. Because the truth is, in order to be free, one must first realize they were trapped. But how many truly realize that? What began as simple curiosity about celebrity behavior reveals itself, layer by layer, as a silent, structured, and meticulously calculated system. We're not just talking about fame, success, or career. We're talking about bodies that may not be fully under their own control, about voices that speak, but not necessarily for themselves, about eyes that gaze, but seem to carry something that isn't human. Art became ritual. The stage became an altar. And we, an audience to a spectacle we don't know we're watching. This story is just one piece, and one day, you may see the whole puzzle. If this made you think, subscribe and like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share. After all, more voices mean more discoveries.